thriving. Friends, at this time we are going to begin the funeral services for Cherie R. If you have a cell phone or a pager, I would ask for you to please take a moment to turn it off or place it in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Rabbi Isaac Serrata and Cantor J. O'Brien.
Thank you very much. Death has taken our beloved Cherie Geller. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there's loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Heal them, O God, be with them. For Cherie's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and are now a precious remembrance. For all these things and more, we give our thanks to God. So in this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures. They bring us the ever-new message of God's nearness. They tell us of our kinship with our Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. So we read words from the Psalms, ancient poems of praise and of healing. Psalm 121 reminds us that God makes an eternal home for us, that God guards our soul always. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever.
Shamayim varetz Ezri meim Adonai Oseh Shamayim varetz. I lift up my eyes up to the mountain. From where will my help arrive? I lift up my eyes up to the mountain. From where will my help arrive? My help, it comes from the Lord, Maker of heaven and maker of earth. My help, it comes from the Lord, Maker of heaven, maker of earth.
Psalm 23 is probably the most famous poem in the world. It's been translated into every language. It teaches us a number of things. First, it reminds us that God does make an eternal home for us, that there is a place for our soul in the world that we cannot see. It also tells us that all of us will go through the valley of the shadow. None of us can escape that. It is the price we pay for loving others, that we will someday have to mourn them. But the key word in that sentence is that God is with us when we go through the valley. Can't go over it or around it, but God cares for us and is with us as we go through this journey. So we say these ancient holy words, the words of the 23rd Psalm, which you can find in the folder that you got as you arrived today. I invite you to join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Adonai roi lo echsar Mino de sheyarbitzeini Alemei menuchot yenachaleini Nafshi yeshovev Yancheini b'magen lehitzadek Yancheini b'magen lehitzadek Leman shemo Gam ki elech megetz al mavet Lo ira rakiat haimadi Shivtecha umishantecha Yenachamuni Taroch lefanai Shulchan neged sorerai Dishantam vashemen roshi Kosi revayai Achtom achesed yudefuni Kol yemei chayai Kol yemei chayai Mishavti meveit Adonai leorach yomim Adonai roi lo echsar Adonai roi lo
It's my honor to share a poem that Elizabeth sent to be read at this moment, a meditation on joy and sorrow by Khalil Gibran. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow," and he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy that you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. And when you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come. And when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. We are saddened by the loss of Cherie Geller, but only because she gave us so much joy in our lives. There is a poem, a chapter from the book of Proverbs, which I think describes Cherie very well. Chapter 31, sometimes refer to it as a woman of valor. A woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than rubies. Her husband trusted in her, so he lacked nothing. She did him good, never harm, all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity. She faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sang her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. The book of Ecclesiastes has that similar message of the poem we read from Gibran that tells us that joy and sorrow are interconnected, that it's a time to be born and a time to die, but at every moment when someone dies, another child is born. These moments are one and the same. Times of laughter and of grief come together. So we read these words and remember that for everything there's a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to discard. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. Indeed, those moments come together as it's a time to listen and a time to speak. So it's my honor to ask Elizabeth to come up and share a few words in memory of her mom.
Thank you all so much for your love and support and encouragement, and for being with us to celebrate and remember my amazing mom, Cherie Geller. So many of you have reached out to our family to provide comfort and share your memories and walk beside us as our strength during this time. Queen Elizabeth said that grief is the price we pay for love. And I think it's quite fitting that Mom passed on the same day as the Queen. My mom had a grace and dignity about her, mixed in with a wicked sense of humor, a brilliant mind, and a fortitude that was invincible. She was a fighter from the beginning, born at just 2 pounds, and wasn't expected to survive. She defied the odds, and as she grew into a young girl, she spent many days with her aunts, who charged her with the immense task of making sure her own mother was taken care of and happy. Mom spent so much of her life loving thoughtfully on everyone, encouraging them and helping to provide opportunities. She took what was an insurmountable task for a young girl and used it to shape and guide her gentle heart. Mom attended college and earned her teaching certificate and met the love of her life while finishing her studies. She was looking for a date for a dance and had asked a friend to set her up. Her mother was very dedicated to Judaism and wanted her only daughter to find a nice Jewish man. Mom just wanted to go to the dance. She described seeing my dad walk up the steps to her dorm and said it was love at first sight. His friends said he was quiet, but with Mom, he would talk for hours. They balanced each other, and my mom was the planner and dreamer, my dad the thoughtful foundation for her, and together they created a magnificent legacy. Mom and Dad adventured often to the East Coast to see the Jersey clan who became our Hart family. One winter we decided to celebrate Hanukkah and Thanksgiving out that way. My Aunt Betty, a devout Catholic, had a giant menorah in her window, and the house was filled with Hanukkah decorations. Needless to say, her neighbors were confused. Mom had a why not, let's try it and see what happens attitude that often went with, what's the worst that could happen? She passed that optimism and joy on to me and agreed to adventure to a cattle ranch in Missouri a few years ago. We spent 7 hours driving. She could barely walk at the time, was using a cane to stabilize her, and on the way down she said, I've been thinking, maybe I will try riding while I'm there, perhaps a small pony? Mind you, she was almost 80 and hadn't been on a horse in a long time. Her infectious ability to inspire others often created the most beautiful relationship with Guadalupe. And I am so incredibly grateful to Lupe for the way she has loved and honored my mom over the years. Lupe also became family, and I have another sister in you. Mom taught us how to plan, to dream, to be fearless and brave, and to love with an endless capacity of hope and joy. My mom was a fierce advocate for my son Chris, always thinking of ways to encourage him, to push boundaries, to think outside the box, and help him experience more freedom and joy in his life. We schlepped for 2 years to Iowa for service dog training, and each time when I was exhausted or hitting a wall, she would gently encourage me, just a little more, hang in there, you've got this, and when you don't, I've got you. And then Damon, the wonder dog, came into our lives in December, just in time for Christopher's birthday. The bond Chris and Damon has been life-changing and liberating for us all, beyond anything I ever could have imagined, planted in the seeds of my mom's dreaming. My sweet mama will continue teaching me for many years. She is the voice in my heart, encouraging me to think beyond boundaries, to see the good in humanity, and to find the joy in each new day. Thank you.
The second poem that Elizabeth sent is by Maya Angelou. And I can picture these words coming out of Cherie's mouth. It's much harder for me to picture them coming out of mine. So, but I will do my best with this poem by Maya. When you see me sitting quietly like a sack left on the shelf, don't think I need your chattering. I'm listening to myself. Hold. Stop. Don't pity me. Hold. Stop your sympathy. Understanding if you got it, otherwise I'll do without it. When my bones are stiff and aching and my feet won't climb the stair, I will ask only one favor. Don't bring me no rocking chair. When you see me walking, stumbling, don't study and get it wrong, 'cause tired don't mean lazy, and every goodbye ain't gone. I'm the same person I was back then, a little less hair, a little less chin, a lot less lungs and much less wind. But ain't I lucky I can still breathe in. in the Bible, in the book of Job. Job cries out in his sorrow. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mevarach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people were well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. So with Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us Cherie, a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and inspiring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of strength, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love. And we say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. And pause for a moment of private prayer, meditation, memory, to think of Cherie and what she meant in your life, what she meant to our community, to think of what we can do for her family to help them recover in this moment of grief. We pause for a moment of private prayer. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. We've gathered here today to honor the memory of Cherie Geller, whose spirit has entered eternity. This day finds us in the month of Elul in the Jewish calendar, the time of preparation for the coming High Holy Days. And our tradition teaches that only the most praiseworthy of people die in the month of Elul. When we gathered last year at Yom Kippur, we asked to be written in the book of life for a year, and Cherie was, until practically the moment of Rosh Hashanah is on us again. It is a tribute to her perseverance, the determination that she had throughout her life, that she would work through whatever happened, and that tomorrow would be a better day. When things were good, Cherie worked to make them even better. When times were rough, she worked to smooth out the edges and go forward. She was indeed a woman of valor, so it's no surprise that her spirit goes on in this holy time of year. And what a spirit Cherie had. She was truly a gift to all who had the privilege of getting to know her. I count myself among that number. Cherie and I have been friends for nearly a quarter century. That friendship has deepened over time. Cherie and her husband Michael joined our community right about the time I arrived. Like a few people I see in this room, she could count the time of her membership by saying she came in when I did. Cherie and Mike joined and quickly became deeply involved in the congregation. Solel reminded me that Cherie was really her first new friend when we got here. Of course, we met many people in that first year. I think I met every member of the community. But Solel had just had our third child in 4 years when we arrived. She was getting ready to look for work and feeling unsure of herself in a new place, having left behind her mother, as well as her professional contacts in Milwaukee. Having worn only maternity clothes for months, she was worried about how she would dress for a round of professional interviews. Enter Cherie, who had a background not only in education, but had also run a woman's boutique in Highland Park. Unbeknownst to me, She came over to the house, went through Sealand's wardrobe, helped her assemble interview outfits. Cherie gave her some hints about how a well-placed rubber band could expand the waist on a skirt covered by a blazer and give Sealand room to breathe before she got her figure back. Am I getting too personal? I hope it makes the point. Cherie was the kind of person you could trust to be that personal. She became a confidant, a friend, a surrogate family member. She and Solel met many times over the years, and we went out together with Cherie and Mike. I remember an evening when Cherie and Mike had us over for dinner, along with our 3 toddlers. The children were all entranced by the remarkable, intricate dollhouse that Cherie maintained. She was kind enough to let them touch the carefully arranged and crafted pieces. It was one of the childhood memories my kids still talk about. It was very special having dinner at the Gellers, because as Cherie would say, she didn't clean her kitchen, she just dusted it. If you wanted to see Cherie, you made reservations. I think she could cook. She just chose not to. Even in recent years, when I would visit her for lunch, she would have a variety of salads from foodstuffs for us to enjoy together. We were certainly not the only ones that Cherie took under her wing. She had a way of building a family of choice around her and turning strangers into friends. It is a special talent to gather community, and Cherie brought it to bear in every aspect of her life. She got so involved in temple activities. She chaired one of our first scholar in residence programs, where she planned details for menus and centerpieces and invitations and programs, making sure no detail was unnoticed. Cherie and Mike wanted to give a gift to the congregation that would last through the generations, and they did. The beautiful tree of eternal life. All of you walked past it as you walked into this chapel today, so you can take special note of it when you leave. Was a gift from Cherie and Mike. It is a gift that keeps on giving, just as they intended, as people continue to memorialize their loved ones with leaves on the tree. I remember sitting on the floor of the sanctuary with Cherie, our administrator at the time, Sally Line, arranging a mock-up of the tree, figuring out where and how it should hang. This is actually, as I recall, its 3rd location. And Cherie supervised every detail from its carving to its hanging. She loved this chapel and the space outside it, which is perfect for the tree. It is a legacy. And Cherie continued to be generous to the community always. Even when times were unsure, she stayed committed. Mike was taken from his family circle too young and very quickly. Cherie and Mike were spending the winter in Arizona. They had, as usual, a great social circle around them, snowbirds from our community. And I got word that Mike was in the hospital and the diagnosis was serious. I hopped on a plane to Arizona, rented a convertible, and headed to the hospital. Cherie always said that I got Mike's last smile. He was happy to see me, but the smile was really about the convertible. We saw it as a way to live with the bitterness of the decree, and it cemented our relationship for good. Cherie grieved for Mike for the rest of her life. Losing someone you love means that life will never go back to what it was. In our tradition, we talk about a week of mourning, Shiva, a month, Shaloshim, and then a year until the first yahrzeit. I can tell you that 10 years later, Cherie still thought of herself as being in mourning. But that did not mean that her life stopped. She made new friends and kept the old. Cherie took Hebrew classes with our Director of Lifelong Learning, Vanessa Ehrlich, and became a bat mitzvah in 2009. Cherie went on trips and went out for meals and to the theater. I'm sorry to say that the last musical we took her to was not to her liking, but we still enjoyed each other's company. Cherie's relationships to Elizabeth and Guadalupe deepened. She fell in love with her grandson, Christopher. and was a tireless advocate for his needs. What delight she took in hanging a mezuzah at Elizabeth's house, in my bringing over a kippah for Christopher to wear at Camp Shai last summer. How proud she was of him for going off to summer camp. How proud she was of you for becoming the women that you are. It meant a lot to me, too, to bring that kippah to Chris, because I remember Cherie and Elizabeth and baby Chris coming to my house. It's actually the first Seder we hosted in our home in Deerfield. After my mother's death, we no longer had a family plan for Passover, so it meant a lot to have guests in our home and begin a new tradition with chosen family. Always carrying the pain of loss, Cherie continued to live step by step and day by day, but Michael was never far from her thoughts. In our last good visit a week ago yesterday, Cherie was alert, looking at a picture of Mike from many years ago. Shalom remarked on how handsome he was, and Cherie said, "And I got him." I don't remember when we started finishing every conversation with an "I love you," but they were the last words we said to each other. Throughout her life, Cherie lived on her own terms. Cherie called Michael the boss of the family, but let's just say he was good at delegating decisions. It is comforting today to think of the two of them reunited, because that is something Cherie longed for. She chose her words carefully, most of the time, spoke deliberately. She built self-esteem in others. She was so proud of Elizabeth and Guadalupe, and spoke often of how good, kind, and accomplished you were. Even when Cherie was ill in the hospital or at home, she never failed to turn the conversation away from herself and asked about the life of the congregation, asked about Solel, asked about our family. Even in that last conversation a week ago, knowing that she had refused to go to the hospital again, that she was in hospice care, Cherie still wanted an update about each of our children. These last couple of years have certainly had a lot of difficult moments. Cherie had several visits to the hospital. She dealt with multiple maladies and complex diagnoses, but it was worth it to get those last few good months with the people she loved. Still, Cherie knew when the fight was over and spent her last week in the kind and skilled hands of hospice. She got to say goodbye, to go out on her own terms. From Cherie, I expected no less than managing her own exit. You mentioned Queen Elizabeth, and I thought, too, that it's fitting that Cherie left us on the same day. In her own way, Cherie was a head of state and a diplomat. When she was studying for her bat mitzvah, Cherie needed a Hebrew name. She didn't receive one at birth, so she got to pick her own. She chose the name Sarah Bat Yisrael. The name means princess, maybe queen. And of course, is the name of the first matriarch of Israel. It was such an apt name, and just as an era comes to an end with the death of Queen Elizabeth, so it does with the death of our beloved friend, Cherie Geller. There's a story passed down through the ages in the commentary on the book of Ecclesiastes. It tells us about two ships sitting at port. One is about to leave on a journey, and the other has returned. There's a throng of people there to see the ship off, to wish bon voyage on its journey, celebrating the beginning of a trip. But the second ship has no one to greet it on its return to port. The commentary suggests that this is exactly backwards. We cheer when a baby is born, not thinking about the difficult journey we all go through in life. Every life is beset by storms and peril. Cherie navigated all of the narrow straits with grace. We celebrate that her ship has returned. Her soul goes back to God who gave it. After the long voyage of bumps and bruises, glorious vistas, and rough seas, Cherie Geller has come to her eternal home. May she rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. I ask you to stand for the closing prayers of our service. The first is a prayer for the immortal soul, the El Malei Rachamim, prayer that reminds us of two kinds of immortality. There's the immortality that God gives us, the soul that goes back to God when we die. And the second kind of immortality is that which we bestow on those whom we love by remembering them and telling their stories. So long as we remember Cherie, she has eternal life.
El Malei Rachamim Shochein Momeramim Amitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Al Kanefei HaShechinah Im Kiroshim Uteorim Kezoar Arakia Mos Yerim Et Nishmot Shalechale Olamo Bal Rachamim Yostireu Beseta Kanafav Leolamim Vitzror Bitzror Achayim Et Nishmata Adonai Unachalatam Ve'yanuach B'Shalom Amishkava V'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Cherie Geller, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. Our closing prayer here will be the Mourner's Kaddish, the Kaddish Yatom. It's called the Mourner's Kaddish, but it doesn't mention death or mourning. Rather, its words are words of blessing. So even at times of sadness, we bless God. We thank God for Cherie, for the good she brought into all of our lives. We say these ancient words. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, b'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei chon u'vyom echon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam ome omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitareh v'yitalal shmei d'kedusha b'richu le'lo min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nehamata damiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Say Shalom b'mrama, hu ya'aseh Shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Will you be seated?
Friends, this concludes the services here at the synagogue. The interment and burial services will continue at Shalom Memorial Park in Arlington Heights. For those of you traveling with us to the cemetery, please do keep the following safety precautions in mind. Please make sure that your bright headlights and your four-way hazard flashers are on at all times. Please be sure to obtain an orange funeral safety sticker for your windshield, and we will be providing several of the cars in the procession with a magnetic orange flag to be placed on top of your car. Please travel as close as safety permits to the car in front of you to avoid any gaps in our procession. And for your own safety and security, I would suggest not speaking or texting while driving to the cemetery and the funeral procession. As we make our way through the intersections, if the light does change colors, please proceed with caution and feel free to use your horn liberally as we make our way through those intersections as safely as possible. Following the interment, the family will be together at the Evergreen Building, located at 2111 Foxglove Drive in Northbrook. And they'll be together as they return from the cemetery today until 7 p.m. and again Monday, tomorrow from 5:30 until 8:30 p.m. The family has also requested that any memorial contributions in her memory to either Keshet, Retrieving Freedom, Creative Mobility, or the North Suburban YMCA. And that information is available on the service folder that you should have received when you came into the chapel this afternoon. And if you did not receive one, we do have those for you as you leave. And for those of you joining us online, that information is also available on our website at chicagojewishfunerals.com. At this time, I would ask for everyone to please rise and stand in place as we take a moment to escort the casket and the family and the clergy from the chapel. Thank you.
Kol Omer Krav Marmat Akra. Kol Havasar Katsir, Kol Hasro Katsitsas. Yavesh Katsir Havelsis, Hirach Adonai Nashmata. Aten Katsir Ha'am, Yavesh Katsir Havelsis. Rubar of the voice says, cry out, and I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, all its beauty is like the flower of the Lord. The grass withers, the flower fades.
Good.